Walker, and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today it is my distinct pleasure to bring you Johanna Zlenko. She is the CEO and founder of the Closet Trading Company. It's a luxury resale and consignment brand with 5 brick-and-mortar locations and an e-commerce section. They also franchise as well as having company-owned stores. So Johanna's going to tell us all about her story, where things are headed, and we can hopefully learn a lot from her. Johanna, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, Jenny, I'm thrilled to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, Johanna, I found out about your store because I have a brother that lives in Santa Barbara, and he sent me this article about your company that had made the newspaper. I don't remember which one it is now because you've been covered many times. But he sent me this article. He says, oh, you should know about this company because they're franchising and, you know, they're right down the street from, he has, operates a gallery on right off of State Street. And he's like, you're right here in the neighborhood. You should know about it. So he sent me the article, and I was like, oh, this is great. I mean, this is fascinating. I didn't know there were any chains left, right? And so the last I had remembered was it like second time around, the big story where they had been all brick and mortar. They didn't go online, and they had to close, and it was not a pretty thing. So the fact that there was a chain around that was growing, I thought was really great. So that's how I found out about you, and I have just remembered that for a long time, and then thought, well, she'd be something great to have on the show, especially now because so many consignment shops and store owners are really at a precipice trying to decide what to do with COVID-19, where do they rush and they go online? Do they shut down? What do? They expand? Do they contract? So this is really why I wanted to have you on the show, to talk about what you're doing, learn from you, and kind of see where it goes from here. So Johanna, thank you for joining us. So tell me, how did you get started with the Closet Trading Company?
Oh, thanks, Jenny. It's so interesting that you found us through the Santa Barbara store, because that actually is the original location, not where it's currently, not the current space on State Street, but the Santa Barbara store is the original PCTC store. And started back actually in 2003. I went to Santa Barbara for college. I was from San Francisco originally and came down to UCSB. And my first week out there, I was looking for a part-time job. I was 18 years old, just kind of looking for something, and I was actually on my way to an interview I'd found from a Craigslist ad at a Greek deli, and I walked by a hiring sign in a shop window. I couldn't really tell what the shop was. The windows were all covered, but I just needed any job, so I didn't care that much. I called the number on the sign, and it turns out that the proprietor was actually there. She came outside, and we chatted a bit, and she explained that she was looking to open a vintage clothing shop in this tiny little space. It was like in an alley, kind of between McDonald's and McDonald's dumpster. So it was real prime real estate. But I'd always had a love for fashion, especially resale. And throughout high school, I'd volunteered at the American Cancer Society Discovery Shop. So I kind of felt like maybe I might be able to help her a little bit and just kind of dip a toe into something I really enjoyed. And, you know, helping to open a vintage store just seemed like a lot more fun than the Greek deli anyway. So I was thrilled when she hired me on the spot. And I helped her paint the space. We remodeled it. It was called The Closet because it was so tiny. It was about 400 square feet. Did our best to make it feel boutique-y, but it was previously an office space, so it was a little bit of a challenge. And we started by going down to thrift stores in Ventura County, which, as you know, the brother in Santa Barbara is right there. And we would buy inventory from the thrift stores and try to resell it. But the original idea was really specialize in vintage. And at the time, that didn't seem to really there just wasn't as much of an appetite for vintage, it seemed like, from our first few months in business. And the original owner ended up deciding to call it quits. Her family situation changed, and she was going to move out of state, and that was going to be it for the Closet. And I just, for some reason, even though it was just a part-time job I'd had for a couple months and it really wasn't successful, I just felt like there was so much potential. I loved the idea, and I felt like if we just kind of curated the inventory more to what I felt like was more in demand, some of the current temporary resale, that we could have success in Santa Barbara, and I ended up acquiring the business from her by taking over the lease, basically, by taking over her lease obligation. And
so what year, let me interrupt you. So what year was this? So what year was this?
This is 2003.
2003. So how long were you working for her before she decided to call it quits?
Total, but between when the store opened and when I took it over, was about 6 months.
So 6 months. Wow, you were just getting your feet wet. So what's interesting is when you talk about vintage, you're talking about traditional vintage, like 50s and 40s and, that kind of 80s outfits. Is that what you're referring to as when you say vintage?
That was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was, in the early 2000s, like 70s. Bohemian looks were in, and where I was from San Francisco, that was very popular, but I guess Santa Barbara just didn't quite translate the same way.
Right. So I love the fact that you were buying your inventory, so you were acting as curator, really from the beginning, trying to figure out what was selling and what was not. And I guess it was to move from vintage into more contemporary clothing, I mean, that's pretty much, that's a bold move considering everything had been predicated on this one type of customer.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been a bold move, except that I just didn't know any better. It was just like, well, my friends have this other type of clothes, so maybe if we have the type of clothes that my friends want to buy, we'll have more sales. That was really the extent of the strategy. And I was living in the dorms. I was a freshman in college, and my friends had stuff they were willing to sell and stuff that they wanted to buy, and if I just kind of went and used them as indicators of what might be interesting to the market there, I thought maybe that would, get us a little bit more traffic, and it just ended up kind of working.
Types of stores, okay, back in 2003, I mean, was there like these other buy-sell trade places in the area, like a Crossroads or a Buffalo and places like that?
There was nothing. There was nothing between LA and San Francisco. There was a couple. There were a couple of consignment shops in Santa Barbara that had been there for many years, but they catered to a different demographic, to a more mature demographic. They were traditional consignment, so there really weren't any options, places to sell other than Craigslist or eBay.
Now you've come a long way from buying and reselling for yourself because you now have this consignment component. Right, you have. So let's go back. Yeah. You've taken over. It's been 6 months. You've taken over, which I just love that you did that. And because you're so young, and you're pretty much running on gut intuition, I think, at this point, right? Because you're kind of laughing about I don't have any strategy. So you're really making decisions based on what you know, even though you're not calling it a big strategy. But it's what your peers are doing, where they're shopping. So, okay, you've jumped into this thing. Now what? Because there's a long way between taking over the store and getting to the point where you've got, you're franchising now. So I think there's a lot that's happened in between. So I want to understand that.
Yeah. So the first few years were really finding our footing, and to say disorganized would be putting them out. Basically, I had friends working in the shop. I would work between classes. They would work between classes. They paid themselves whatever they felt was fair. They left their hours on a Post-it in the drawer with however much they took. It was just like, can I make this work as kind of a side hustle through college to help me pay for college? And that was really the goal. Like, this was kind of fun and kind of a challenge. And maybe if we, actually were bringing some sales in the door, it could help me pay my expenses. And as soon as we, like I said, it was when we pivoted to the contemporary stuff, it did start working. Like there were customers that became interested. And at the time, it was, I'm sure you remember, it was Juicy Couture, True Religion, Kylie Malibu. Those were the it brands. And I will never forget when we had our first pair of True Religion jeans sold to us, I hung them on a nail on the wall to feature them. Were such a big deal. Like, this was the thing. And the more we started kind of isolating, these are the brands that are really working. Let's, put an ad in the newspaper for these brands. And when I say we, I'm talking about like, me and my friends who are kind of just helping me at home. And that was starting to work. Oh, if we put an ad in, and this is the only place to sell your True Religion and Juicy in town, people were starting to sell their True Religion and Juicy. And so started getting a little bit of traction in the community. And we were in that space, that original space, for 6 years, actually. And during that time, towards the tail end in 2008, we opened another little shop out in Westlake Village, and ultimately moved the original Santa Barbara store to State Street, moved the Westlake Village location to Agoura Hills, and then opened Santa Monica and Topanga. And more recently, Topanga was the newest 4 years ago.
Now, let me ask you this. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So when you took over from this woman, did you literally pay money for the business? You bought at some price this business from her?
Yeah, the price was the obligation of taking over the lease.
Got it. So you basically got her out of her lease as
exactly.
buying her whole. Wow, that's a good price. So
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
So
it's either shut it down or yeah.
Right. I think that's fantastic. So in her mind, she just needed to get out of the obligation for these leases. And I know, because I have a lease, I know all about that. So I understand that's a big deal. So at what point did you realize this was actually making money? Because it takes a minute of, reconfiguring everything. I like the fact that you said you were realizing what brands were selling, were honing in on it, because that is a mainstay of being successful in this industry, is these trends keep changing. It's juicy one minute and it's free people the next, right? So I like the fact that you just kind of intuitively knew that certain things were selling and that you would focus on that. And that really, this curation is so much a part of what makes these stores work well.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of it I think came from just not having any experience, which in a way I came in with a blank slate. I didn't have any preconceived ideas of this is what it should be. It just was like, well, these things are selling, so I'm going to buy more of them. And as far as when it started to turn around, it actually didn't take that long at that point, because we were so lean. It was like I said, it wasn't a glamorous space, and it was tiny, so our rent was very low, and I was the primary employee, and I had a couple friends that would help out part-time. Our expenses were so low, we would only take out an ad in the paper if our sales were good enough to pay for that ad. So everything was bootstrapped, but it also, because of that, we didn't have, a big build-out that we had to compensate for or anything like that. So it actually started turning around pretty quickly, because we were really living it, day-to-day, month-to-month.
Got it. So, okay, so then there's a space between your first store is now profitable and you're ready for another store. So how much time had passed? And when you created the second store, was that a store that you bought? Did you take over someone's lease, or did you create it from scratch?
So the second store I opened in 2008 and in the Conejo Valley, like I said, in Westlake Village. And we did build that one from scratch, but it was also very modest. It was in a strip mall kind of towards the back. It was bigger than the first store, but it was still small. I think it was, I want to say it was like 800 square feet, something like that. And it was the first build out, but it was, again, it was a humble project. I just needed to get this little shop open. It wasn't like a big fancy store or anything. Then pretty quickly, that one was much more challenging though. Mm-hmm.
So that was 5 years had passed. So what was it where you said to yourself, I'm ready for a second store? I mean, what happened in your mind that you said, I'm ready to expand, I'm ready to grow this concept?
Well, I'd graduated from college in 2007, and that was a big part of it. I kind of looked at the store, I looked at the company, and I needed to make a decision. Either I'm going to really go all in and try to make something long-term out of this, or I'm going to need to go get a real job. And this was 2007. Within a year, we were in a full-on recession. There wasn't that much available out there as far as really promising employment opportunities. So I felt like I'm just going to double down, and I'm going to make this my real job. And so that's kind of what it was. The first store was doing well enough because the expenses we were really kept down, we were actually making some money, and we've been able to set aside enough to finance a second store. And so that was the decision. There was nothing like it in the Conejo Valley at all. There were no consignment shops in that area at all, not just buy, sell, trade. And so it seemed like, well, maybe this is the spot to try it out.
So now you decided to have a second store versus have a bigger store in your one location. So tell me why you made the decision to do it that way.
Felt like there was this underserved market or unserved market in the Conejo Valley that's fairly affluent. And I just thought that there must be women filled with all these closets filled with great stuff in this area, and they have nowhere to sell it. They would have to go down to LA, or they'd have to go up to Santa Barbara. And we were seeing consigners from that area come up to Santa Barbara, and that's a drive. That's an hour at least for them each way. And so it just made me think that there is this community that if we can be the first here, that might enrich the quality and quantity of inventory we're getting in. We'll be able to swap inventory between stores. So it just seemed like, well, between relocating and expanding the original or having a second seemed like it would create more opportunities.
Now, at what point did you start taking in consigners? Because it sounds like you originally were all resale.
Yeah, we weren't all resale at the very beginning. We started, gosh, that's a good question, when we started consigners, probably a year or two into the original store. So I'd say offhand, probably 2005-ish, we started accepting items, luxury items on consignment. Like, our first couple, like Louis Vuitton purses, I couldn't afford to buy them outright. So we would offer kind of an informal consignment agreement, and then slowly that became more common. And then much later on, 2000, probably 11, 12, around there, we shifted to primarily offering consignment.
Now, are you still hiring friends at this point, or have you started bringing in people that you don't know to start working for you?
So, definitely bringing in people from the outside. The friends, they were super helpful while we were in college, and I think that they didn't really want to have much to do with it after that.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay. So you've got this second store, and how much time passes and you're like, I'm ready for another one? Tell me how much time has passed. I mean, because obviously you've realized that you're onto something. So it's 2008, you got the second store. And then what happened?
So 2008, the second store, the recession hit. The first few months were very difficult, the second store. I didn't think we were going to make it at all. We had finance to build out, and now we had to pay all that, and we're introducing the concept to a whole new market. It was so challenging, and I really underestimated how big of a challenge it would be. And then slowly it started turning around. It took about a year, and then we started getting the regular consigners in, the regular sellers, the regular customers, and it started taking. And as the economy continued into its free fall in 2009, we actually started seeing a surge in interest in secondhand, a surge in consignments coming in. And at that point, we realized that, this is a solution for a lot of people. This is part of a solution. This is income that they can bring home. This is a way for them to use things they already have. This is a way for them to access the luxury items they want at an affordable price. There's something here. And so as we progressed through 2009 into 2010, I relocated that original Santa Barbara store onto its State Street location where it was for another 10 years, up until November of last year, and into a much bigger space. And then 2011, I opened the Santa Monica store, which is the biggest, or was the biggest store up until the new SB one. So that's a 2,500 square foot store on Main Street in Santa Monica. And it was mostly fueled by the recession, honestly, and the changing consumer patterns and the changing attitudes towards secondhand.
So at this point, is that right?
That's right.
At this point, I want to make sure I'm following. Now, at what point are you going online? Because you obviously have a big online presence at this point. So at what point in this process are you starting to put things online?
We started to use social media to sell products. Gosh, I don't remember the years, but pretty early on. I think when we first started, Facebook was brand new. We definitely didn't use it yet. It was only for college students, if I remember correctly. But probably, I'd have to go back and look, maybe 2008, 2009, we started using social media to sell product. And then Instagram, we started using Instagram, and then true e-commerce, like a robust e-commerce platform, we rolled out. It was supposed to roll out in Q3 of this year, and we rolled it out 2 days after the quarantine started. So I think it was March 19th of this year.
So your e-commerce platform, is it only on your own website, or are you also doing other online platforms like eBay and Poshmark and things like that?
It's just on our own website.
Okay. And do you put 100% of your inventory? Do you put 100% of your inventory online, or is there only you pick and choose from what you have?
Yeah, at this point, we're putting less than 10% of our inventory online, and we'd love to continue to expand that, but that's where we are at the moment.
So how do you coordinate when you have more than one store putting it online? Is there some sort, is it only in one store at this point that you're putting it online, or because you have a number of stores at this point?
Yeah, so what we did was when this whole quarantine started, we rolled out photo setup for each store, and so each store has its own little setup, and with whatever they need, the backdrop, the box lights, the mannequin, so forth, and each store is expected to send in a certain number of items every day to the online store, and then so the corporate office handles the infrastructure on the back end, gets everything loaded, handles fulfillment for all the stores, and that's for the franchise location as well. So that's how we're doing it. Each store is just expected to send in a certain minimum of items, and during the quarantine, when we weren't able to be open to customers, it was a total lifesaver. Now we've had to lower the number of items that we're requiring our stores to send in because now they're also serving customers in store. So we're trying to find that balance, and ultimately we'd like to get to the point where not 100% of the inventory, but probably about 75% of the inventory in store is also being loaded online.
So when you say send in, do you mean physically send in the product to a location, or send in photos that they've taken based on the backdrops that you've given them?
Send in photos. The physical item
okay, got
at
it.
the location.
Got it. Physical audit. Right, and then they ship it out from there. That sounds great. So COVID-19 has made a big, it's the world's largest disruption, I guess, that I've ever seen. Yeah. And so it's interesting that you use that opportunity to pivot into the e-commerce. So can you tell me about how that decision came about? Because, and kind of like where you were, just in general terms, financially when it hit, and kind of what your thinking was, because so many consignment shops right now are suffering, and they're having, and they haven't been online because it's not normal for a brick and mortar consignment shop to be online. It's actually, right, something that's not done as much as will be in the future or should be done. But a lot of these stores are slow to go online. Okay, like so many other stores. So.
Sure.
So this is a big decision that people have to make, and they have to set up a system so that inventory is tracked and consignment splits are still, handled in the right way, and depending on your software and things like that. But it's a big financial investment. It's a big decision to say to yourself, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to try to go online as a way to save my business versus I'm going to sell. I'm going to walk out. Somebody just take over my lease because I got to go, right? So tell me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotion involved in this. It isn't just numbers. This is a very personal thing for people. So can you talk about what you went through and how you came to the decision and to the point that you were going to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, like you said, it's emotional, it's financial. There are just so many different aspects. You want to find ways to continue to support your team. You want to find ways to continue to serve your customers and consignors. There are still, like you said, physical store leases to be reckoned with. And especially at the beginning of this, I think we all didn't know, are we ever going to be able to come back to our stores? Is this closure going to be for a week or a year? And I think there were a couple of factors that helped guide the decision for me and for my team. The first was that we were already planning on going online. We had planned on being fully available on the e-commerce channel we wanted to be live by the holidays of 2020. So Q3 wanted to go live. We'd already been working on the site for a while. So it just wasn't as accelerated because we thought we had a bunch of time still to work on it, but we had been working on it. The back end was already done. We were already mapping out what fulfillment would look like for franchise locations and corporate stores. The graphics were mostly already complete. A lot of it was done, and that was really just luck. There's no way we could have known we would have needed it this particular moment. We just knew that eventually we needed to offer an omni-channel experience for our customers, that was just part of what was happening. And in order to be able to be successful in brick and mortar, I think it's just we need to be able to also be accessible in customers' homes and on their mobile devices. We need to be there all the time. And I think that as we just kind of look around, the businesses that are most likely to survive and thrive in this next phase are ones that are nimble in that sense, that are offering customers an experience that they can have from anywhere. And we knew we needed to do that regardless of pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, we just knew we needed to do it immediately. So, all hands on deck. We knew we needed to launch the site right away. And part of it was we wanted to be able to keep our employees on staff. So we needed to give them something to do. And we got these photo setups rolled out. And initially we had them delivered to our managers' homes, actually, because they couldn't go to the stores. And we just started delivering inventory to their homes. And our managers were gracious enough to invite us into their living rooms virtually to photograph these items and send the product photos in, and our admins on the back end worked from home to get everything loaded. We were doing the fulfillment just from employees' homes. And then as soon as we were able to get back into the stores, we shifted into the stores. But the biggest part of the decision, I guess, is that we already knew we were going down that road, and it was more a matter of accelerating the process and of changing the strategy.
Got it. So, Johanna, tell me how long it is now taking for you to see the results of the sales online. I mean, did you see an immediate results? Did you support it through social media? What did you do to get that going?
We did see an immediate result. We right away started using it. Yeah, social media definitely has been helpful, and also emails have been really helpful. So emailing our database, letting them know of new arrivals, drops, clearances, sales, all of that has been really, really helpful. So just making the best use of the data and the contacts we already have has been really helpful in introducing the online component to our existing customers. And I think social media and working with influencers, especially micro-influencers, has been helpful in introducing the concept to customers that are new to us.
I saw on your website that you have affiliates and you also have influencers that you work with to help get the word out. I think that's terrific. So if I understand it correctly, affiliates get a referral, some sort of referral credit or referral fee for bringing you a new consignor. Is that a one-time fee?
That's exactly right. Okay. Generally speaking, it's an ongoing fee. So they will get a percentage of sales that they drive to the site.
Okay, now that's the affiliate.
That's the affiliate.
Or the influencers. Okay.
That's the affiliate, and the influencers sometimes work as affiliates. So influencers might decide they want to work on an affiliate basis.
Got it. So there's two things: is if someone buys something, someone uses a link. Is that it? How it works? They use a link and they buy from the site, the affiliate link, versus here's my friend Betty Sue, then she'd like to be a consignor. That's a separate, because those are really good incentives.
Yeah. So the way that we do it, and we do work with a third-party vendor to organize a lot of the affiliate relationships, but just to kind of this affiliate world was really new to me. So for anyone who's not familiar with how it works, it's kind of like this. Say Mary is an influencer on social media, and maybe Mary has a blog, a cooking blog or something. Mary either mentions the Closet Trading Company in her blog in some way. She's wearing a top, let's say, from one of the stores, and she mentions it. Or she mentions it on her social media channel, and in that post she says, check it out, and use code Mary20 for 20% off of your purchase. And so Mary's followers are driven to the site because they get a discount. And then Mary gets a percentage of whatever sales a commission, essentially, whatever sales she drives to the site. So that's kind of how affiliate marketing works.
And how is that working for you in terms of, like, what percentage of your sales are if you can share, like, is it like a 1%? I mean, is it significant what's happening that's being driven from these affiliates, or is it still kind of just a tiny little bit at this point?
It's about 30%. So 30%
from,
it's not the majority, but it's significant.
Yeah, that's significant. Yeah. That's
a
big amount. No wonder people like
it. It's fascinating. Yeah, exactly. I knew
it is
about that. I thought that it was like, oh, they just mentioned your business, but it's actually pretty structured, and there's a whole industry behind this. So I do recommend that if anyone is interested in affiliate marketing, that they look to work with a third party. I think it's helpful to use someone that specializes in affiliate marketing because there is such a whole maze to it.
That is just fascinating because, I mean, I know I see those things. I mean, I see it, and, you know, I do click on some things only because it interests me, you know, not because that person told me, but somehow whatever it is caught my eye or caught my attention, and I saw it through however means I saw it going through Instagram, whether it was their post or the brand. It works on me all the time. Yeah, I know. I'm a sucker, man.
Me too. And it's like, you know how you know exactly what's happening, but it still works. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is really cool. So you are doing all the right things, obviously, to grow your business. Now, the other thing you've done, which I just love, the fact that you organized yourself for franchising. Now, I just got to know how that decision came about, because there's obviously, you got to be organized enough to franchise yourself, meaning, you know, your best practices have to be written down. You have to be able to support a franchisee. There's obviously the legal costs of creating that legal portion of it. I mean, that's no small fee, probably I don't know how many tens of thousands, but at least $10,000 to set up something like this, I would imagine. So talk to me about what happened where you said yourself, I want to keep growing. I'm all in. I'm obviously not going to get another job. This is what I do now. I'm growing my own stores, but hey, why not see if there's some, why don't we have a franchise? Why not? So tell me how that came about.
That was a long path. Let's see. It feels like I've been working on it my entire life. But it was probably about 7 years ago. I was looking at, recently I was kind of revisiting some meeting notes that I had when we first started talking about what method of expansion is going to be best suited to this business. And I think the original notes were actually 2009 where it was mentioned, like, okay, maybe franchising, and then kind of revisited again several years later. And it mostly, so we had by then 4 stores, I think it was 2016, and it just is a lot, you know, you're kind of in a whirlwind all the time in daily operations, trying to get 4 stores all running smoothly at the same time. And there's always, you know, staffing challenges and training challenges and all these different things going on. And I was looking at that, and I knew I wanted to grow the business, but I just couldn't imagine how we would take on more stores and run them ourselves, and especially if we wanted to grow outside of our region. And that was a big part of it. I really want to bring the Closet Trading Company to other parts of the country, and I feel like there are so many markets that are either totally unserved by these types of stores or underserved, and like, how am I going to do that? How am I going to run all over the country trying to do this and not go insane? And so that was, you know, honestly a big part of the decision is what's a way that we can grow and the stores can be successful, and we're not just like pulling ourselves in a million directions trying to make it happen. And the other part of it is I've done a lot of research on franchise businesses, and most of the time, historically, franchise stores, it's all different segments, do better than corporate-owned locations, which, you know, totally intuitively makes sense. It's the franchisee's own business. And they're there and they're present and they're more vested, generally speaking, than an employee might be in the same business. And that really stuck with me. It's like, this is so cool. We've learned so much over the years of trying to run these stores and grow them, and now we can help other people who have always maybe thought about having their own business but aren't really sure what the first steps to take or how to shorten the ramp to success or how to make sure that they are profitable and not having to reinvent the wheel. And that, I think, was really what motivated me to move forward with franchising. I love the idea that these are partnerships with business owners, and we can give them all of the advice and all of the lessons that we've learned, and they can have their own store and they can do the thing they wanted to do, and they can actually make it profitable in a really short amount of time instead of making all the mistakes that I made along the way.
So how long did it take to set up the legal part of this? So you went back, you saw this was an idea. Okay, you talked. What did you screen and try to find the right franchise lawyer, or what did you do? And then at the point that you found the right person, how long did the process take to set up before you found your first franchisee?
In total, it took about 4 years. From the time we became really serious about it to the time that we had our first franchisee. And the first step was...
I didn't think it would be 4 years. I didn't think your answer would be 4 years.
It took a while.
So, okay,
just the legal part took a long time.
So how much did just the legal part... Let's stop between the legal part is done. How long did that take?
From the time we officially were legally allowed to sell franchises in the state of California to the time we had our first franchisee was, we launched in June, first franchisee in February, so 7 months.
So 7 months after you set up, so it took you basically over 3 years to set it up. Am I understanding?
Yeah. Yep. That's
wow. Mm-hmm. That's a process. I mean, is that normal for that long length of, is that normal or is it something that could take place in a shorter amount of time if you knew what you knew now?
I think it is actually fairly normal. We worked with a mentor, and he's now on our board of directors, an individual. His name is Neil Courtney. He is currently the CEO of another much larger franchise brand, but before that he was the CEO of famous brands such as Mrs. Fields Cookies and TCBY. So we worked with like a true industry vet in getting this set up, and it's still how long it took. So I think there are different brands that have different approaches to franchising, and I think there are brands whose approach is, frankly, to just get the franchise fee and hand over a manual, and if it works out, it works out, and the goal is just to expand quickly and to collect fees and to sell. For me, this business is something it's like a child to me. I've grown it for 17 years. I would never feel comfortable just handing someone over a manual and hoping for the best and hoping that they didn't tarnish the brand or hurt the brand long term. So our approach was, how do we do this in a way that we give these franchisees every possible chance to be successful in their business? And that means really taking a look at every single process. And this involved a lot of outside help. So this involved people coming in from other brands in other segments and giving us advice and evaluating what we were doing and showing us how we needed to streamline certain systems. And that was probably what took the majority of the time was, oh, this is how you do pricing? Well, this isn't going to work for franchising. Your pricing needs to be automated for franchising. You need a tool. For authentications, you need a tool. For communications, you need a tool. Everything needs to be, to some extent, in a pretty controlled system. You can't just really leave it up to people or you'll never have consistency within the brand. And so the majority of the time was spent actually optimizing what we had already before making it available as a franchise.
Wow, that is interesting. So your first franchise ended up in, I guess, Miami. And is that store up and running now?
It's in development right now. So it's just north of Miami, and they're opening this fall. So they're in the build-out phase right now. They're getting set up. They're in franchisee training, which has been also a little bit of a wrench because we planned on being able to train them here in California at our stores, and now the travel is limited. All of their training is remote, which, again, forced us to evaluate every part of our business again. How can we train someone how to open one of these stores without them ever being inside one of these stores for more than, a cumulative hour that they spent here in January? So that's been a big challenge, and now we're going to do this entire remote training process with them, and they're going to open in a couple months.
That's really exciting. Now, I know on your website you have it all spelled out about the franchising. I love the fact you have the startup costs in there, but then you also talk about the kind of person that would probably be good for this opportunity. So how did you find this person or persons to become the franchise? Was it word of mouth? I don't know how this works. Is there an outside company you use to find it? You just post it on one of these business selling sites that's online? I mean, is there a broker involved? Is it just serendipity?
Yeah.
How does this work?
Yeah, I know. And people do find franchisees in all different ways. This particular family, they were connected with us through a broker, and they're wonderful people, first of all, which is a big part of the reason why we chose them, and hopefully why they chose us to work together. And it's a partnership. You really work hand in hand with these people. It's like a marriage. You commit to one another for 10 years. We commit to them to support them through this, and they commit to us to execute. So you're really looking for, is there chemistry with these people? Can we work together? Do they have, high emotional intelligence? Are they empathetic? Can we communicate well? It's not enough for them to just want to sign the contract and hope for the best. So in this case, we were connected through a broker, and it's interesting how it happened. Gabby and Antonio are the couple, and they have 3 small children. They actually just moved to Florida 2 weeks ago. And so when we met them, they were living in Mexico City. They came out to visit, and as it turned out, they come to LA pretty frequently. And Gabby had actually shopped in our Santa Monica store many, many years ago, but totally unrelated to anything, and she had loved it and had bought some shoes that she remembered and had loved the experience. And so that was a part of it. They had, even though they're not from here, they had the customer experience that we hope to deliver to our clients, and it had stuck with her enough that was something that she, as she looks to re-enter the workforce, she's been home with her kids for a long time, she wants to do something she's passionate about, and she is passionate about the experience that we deliver to our clients. So I feel really confident that she will also be able to deliver it because she was on the other side, on the receiving side.
So I'm assuming that they signed up for this pre-COVID-19. Is that a good assumption, to be a franchisee? So now that that's happened, how does that impact how they roll this out? Has it changed their plans? Has it changed the timing? What impact has it had, if any?
Yeah, I think thankfully so far the impacts have mostly been mitigated. Like I said, the training is probably one of the larger impacts, and that they will have to train remotely. Other than that, no one can see the future, of course. We'll see what happens in the winter, and if there are serious, waves of this or store closures again, that will be an impact certainly. And we're going to do our best to support them with e-commerce through that if that is the case. But we're hoping that maybe we're on the tail end of this thing, and they'll be able to open their store kind of when it's petering out. So we'll just have to see.
Well, what's interesting is you started in this business during a recession, and now we're basically in another one. And so this industry has always been called recession-proof. And I absolutely agree with you in terms of people need money. They need it to pay bills. They need it to, I don't know, it's a really creative way. I mean, you can go to the gold store, the buy, sell, trade gold store, or you can go to a pawn shop, or you can go to a consignment shop, right? You can sell it for yourself. There's so many ways that people can turn their things into cash. And I love the fact that consignment is a really wonderful way to get a lot of money for what you have. If you can wait and let it, the whole thing is, I know in my consignment shop, I have one in Pasadena. It's called Walker Viden Luxury Consignment. And we were voted Best New Business in Pasadena in 2017. And so we've been recognized each year for that. And, you know, it's really interesting because I get calls all the time about people who I always get, when they say the word, I want to sell my Chanel, right? I know my buzz goes off in my head because we're consigning, right? We aren't buying. I mean, I can't say we've never bought anything, but we don't we don't have a big pool of money to go buy a bunch of stuff. So we selectively have bought over the years. I mean, I could count on two hands what we've bought. So anyway, when I get the call, you know, I want to sell my Chanel bag, I'm immediately like, well, are you interested in selling outright or are you interested in consigning? Because you generally get more money if you can wait. Everyone cannot wait, right? And so I love the fact that consignment is an option for people who need to turn something into cash. And, I mean, you're a woman. You know how we shop. You know how half of what's sitting in our closet we're not doing anything with. It's just sitting there gathering dust, reminding us of, you know, days gone by or whatever, and we're not using it. And, you know, it's really, really such a genius way to get cash, particularly during a recession, particularly now. And so, you know, it's just smart. And then also people are looking to buy these things. Now, I know that during COVID, what people were buying from us, we sell online. We put 100% of our inventory online. And they were buying Chanel handbags and Gucci belts, everything highly branded. And then they were buying James Pierce sweats, Chrome Hearts sweats, the Great China Wall blinged out hoodies. Like it was high-end and golden goose shoes, right? So it was high-end casual and luxury bags and accessories. Nobody wants a heel. Nobody wants a dress. Nobody wants a gown. Like that's what happened to us the last. So, you know, so people are buying and they're buying they were buying high quality, highly branded at a discount because it's just smart to be able to save money. I have one of my consigners, and the first time she kind of wandered into the store by accident because I think someone, like there's a dentist next to us, so we get a lot of mothers waiting on children at the dentist. So she came in and she's like looking around and she ends up buying a Louis Vuitton handbag and she says, you know, I've never even considered this. You know, I've always bought at the store. But she's like, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this bag, and I can save, you know, a couple $1,000s. I said, I know. And so she took it home. And she's like, and she loved it so much. She's like, you text me every time you get in Louis Vuitton. So I have been texting her and texting her. And finally I texted her something that she liked, and she came in, bought it, and walked out. And it was just like, all right. So this is someone new to buying consignment who's been normally paying full price. And so there's so many different ways to look at it because I think what's going to happen is that the in-store luxury experience is going to change dramatically. And people are going to want to differentiate that experience because anybody and everybody can now buy luxury online at a discount, right? And there's all these Affirm and payment plans, like you can put on layaway or whatever you want to talk about it. Like, so where is that definition between I'm the person who can go into Chanel and pay $7,000 for a handbag and walk out versus the person who's going to buy that $7,000 bag for $3,000 in your store, you know, or buy it online through a company and pay for it over time, over 12 months with a firm, right? So I think a lot of that's going to shake out in the industry. But I do know that, you know, this industry is really ripe right now, and we're getting all kinds of calls. And, you know, but I'm changing what I'm taking in. I was turning away. Someone brought in like a vintage Louis Farad suit from the 80s. I'm like, no, you need a vintage shop. They brought in a pair of Yves Saint Laurent denim jeans with a little piece of chain around it. I'm like, I cannot give that away. That's not the YSL they want. They don't want that one. Right. They don't want that piece. Right. And then I had I had this beautiful, beautiful vintage dress with no label and rips all inside the lining where the label used to be. Absolutely gorgeous. And I'm like, I'm not taking that in. It's damaged, you know. And so at this point, and I just turned everything away, and I could have taken those jeans and prayed they sold, and I could have taken something else, but I'm just like, this is not going to work for us. And now we're being super hypercritical about what we're taking in because of the manpower to process all this stuff. And I don't see any point in taking in something that's a brand that sells but not a style that sells when everything is so up in the air with COVID, and they've changed what they're buying. No heel. Don't bring me any heels. Don't bring me a gown. Don't bring me a dress, right?
It's so true. It's so true.
Yes. So how are things changing in what you are taking in, or at least advising your stores to take in with the pandemic? Can you talk about what shifted with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you bring up so many interesting points with just how the whole industry is shifting, what buyers are looking for from stores, from experiences, from shopping in general is changing. As far as what we are looking at and what we're seeing a demand for a lot, it's exactly, I think you nailed it. A lot of the Golden Goose sneakers, a lot of the other luxury sneakers, no heels. We're looking at a lot of the real trendy kind of contemporary and luxury sweats and sweat sets have been doing really well. The luxury handbags continue to do very well. And as far as dresses and jeans, there are just certain brands that continue to hit really well for us. Reformation is still batting 1,000. Lululemon is kind of a sure thing. So there are certain brands that are doing very well, even in categories that maybe are harder, like denim, but certain denim brands, Revice is doing really well for us. And I'm trying to think which of the others outside of the obvious. Athleisure, of course, is so hot. But comfortable. I guess people are looking to be comfortable. Everyone is going to school from home, working from home. But one thing that I think is so interesting also with the shift that we're all going through is here in LA, you know, like you said, your customer who bought the Louis Vuitton, maybe previously she would have just gone into a Louis Vuitton boutique and purchased that bag at full price. But a lot of parts of the country, there is no immediate access to a Louis Vuitton boutique or a Chanel boutique or an Hermes boutique. And with department stores closing everywhere, there's just going to be less access for people looking to shop who previously maybe didn't consider secondhand for many reasons, but among them, maybe they just could afford new and it didn't really cross their mind to look for a better deal, or maybe they're, you know, associated a stigma with secondhand. But now that their Neiman Marcus is going to be closed and their Nordstrom's going to be closed and they don't have a Chanel boutique in their town, I think that we're going to see a trend where people are going to be more open-minded regardless of what they can afford, but just because they want access to those luxury goods. And once they find that, just like your customer, that they can pay so much less and get that bag in great condition, it's going to be hard for them to turn back. I think they're going to become secondhand customers forever, just like we saw in the last recession.
Absolutely. I ruined for shopping any other way.
100%.
You know, being around it. Yeah, being around it. And it isn't even the fact that it's a better price. That is like the least of it. Something unique and something different. And there are so many beautiful things in the world that already exist. And so the new retail is going through what's already out there and, you know, sorting through
instead
it.
of creating more waste. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know the environmental part of all of this is one that I don't know, it's always so self-evident. I don't end up talking about it, but sure, I mean, this has to be changing how things are going on. For example, if all of the stats that are out there about how the industry is growing point to the fact that it's, you know, billions and billions of dollars of new sales that are taking place in what's already exists. But if manufacturing isn't slowing of new goods, then I don't know what that says, because you would think if more is happening selling what's already out there, that in theory it would reduce the amount of new things being made. And I don't know that that's actually happening, because I don't have those kind of stats. But if because of COVID, all of this manufacturing stops, right, then we are left with only place you can get your favorite Gap sweats is online, you know, the only, or online through a Poshmark seller or online through, you know, some sort of reselling mechanism. Because in addition to what we haven't even talked about is, in addition to like ours, and is you have all these independent sellers now, which is a whole other aspect of all of this. And then you've got the big chains online. It's not even the right word. You have a company like The Real, companies like ThredUp, and you know they're the behemoths. You know, they have taken what has. I love to listen to Julie Wainwright talk about, act like she's discovered something that's brand new. What she's done is taking what has existed since 1940s, when the first store, Michael's, it was out of New York, and she put it online. She put it online in a big way, and that's definitely something that hadn't been done before, where it's like so global. That she did do, but she did not invent the consignment or online consignment, but she's done something that is absolutely extraordinary. You know, so, and then ThredUp, who has a very different customer, a very different appeal. Their whole mantra from the beginning was how it saves the planet and, you know, kind of the recycling aspect. Real focus is on the luxury aspect, right? But ThredUp has done something extraordinary too. And what's interesting is that you really know about how global all this is and how we're all affected in such a big way by following the stats, listening to the stories, seeing how everything is just growing like crazy. We know that there are 40% more sellers on Poshmark and 40% more sellers on eBay, which means there's 40% more inventory on all these platforms too.
I mean, our home pickup, we do home pickups for clients. Our home pickups are up by 70% over last year.
So there's no shortage.
I mean, it's surging.
Right? There's no shortage. It's no shortage of this stuff. And I think it's never more evident. Like in my consignment shop, we had an estate that we picked up, and we had 1,000 pieces that we hand inventoried and photographed before they ever left the home.
Wow.
1,000. One person, one closet.
Wow.
And there's probably 1,000 more pieces that weren't right, that were sellable. So this is one closet in one house in the LA area. That's mind-boggling.
The volume
and
is
so,
it's exactly mind-boggling is it. Yeah.
And there's so much already out there, and I think that you know, yes, it helps the planet, and yes, I would love to see these factories shut down where they have, you know, 6-year-olds, you know, hand sewing things or whatever they're doing. Like it's just all of these things going on that are not different culture. It's a different culture, but nonetheless, all of this manufacturing of junk going on. Because the art and the beauty of things like Chanel, where it's handmade and it's a work of art, is very different from mass producing something in Bangladesh or China or Vietnam, where you have 8 million of the same white T-shirt, you know.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I think he really like hitting something on the nail with this idea that shopping and fashion and the way we dress ourselves, it's an emotional experience. It's a form of expression, which we all know, but it's not just about buying. And the mass production of fashion, it becomes kind of about buying, right? Like you just buy your shirt on Amazon, but you go shopping for a top in a store. It's a totally different emotional experience, right? Like you go because it's an activity, because it takes your mind off other things, because the thrill of looking for something and then finding it and it being just right is an endorphin rush, and it has a therapeutic value. And I think that, you know, people say, oh, like who's shopping in a pandemic? Who isn't shopping in a pandemic? We're all going through this very traumatic thing, all of us all together, right? And it's not necessarily about, you know, how much we can afford, because I'm not saying that everyone is shopping for a Chanel bag in a pandemic. But the point is we shop for therapy. We don't necessarily just shop because we need things. If we needed things, we would all wear the same burlap sack all day, every day. And the reason there's so much differentiation is because we associate it with an expression of ourselves, and cultivating that expression it's something that we need to feed our souls in this really difficult time. And I think when, I get the question of, well, our brick and mortar store is going away. No, they're never going to go away because you're never going to be able to replace that experience with a click online. It's not going to be the same thing. And there's a reason that, you mentioned the Real, there's a reason that these stores that are behemoths online are also opening brick and mortar locations because they recognize the importance of having multiple channels accessible to the customer. I think that brick and mortar experience cannot be replaced by a click. And when you're discussing how stores are going to differentiate themselves coming out of this, I think that the stores that are going to continue to thrive are going to be the ones that focus on what their customer actually needs. They're not going to look at what can we sell. They're going to look at what does our customer need from us. Do they need a smile? Do they need a conversation? Do they need to have someone ask about them because they're busy taking care of their family all day and this is the one thing they get to do that week that's just about them? So I think that that's what it's going to come down to, is who is going to offer to really look after the customer at a time when the customer needs compassion.
Absolutely. And, there definitely is no replacing the in-store experience. But I do know that people have so many different reasons to shop. And in my own store, I've had people come in. It's my birthday. And so they pick out, 3 or 4 things to buy. And if it's something very expensive, I always get the words, I'm going to treat myself. That it is the foreshadowing of every time I sell a Chanel handbag. I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to treat myself. Because it's interesting because it's, it could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Here's a credit card. Like, that's actually a lot of money for something. Yeah. And it's a piece of leather. Right. And so much of what makes something valuable to another person, there's so many things around it, but it isn't the materials in it because,
totally.
It's more than that. It's what it represents. Maybe it's a piece of
it's about
trying to find,
Yeah. And especially for women who are caretakers and who are responsible for so much, around the house, they're responsible for the well-being of so many others. I'm generalizing, of course, but I think as women, we all recognize that we, we're trying to keep everyone's spirits up. We're trying to take care of everything and everyone in our home. And you're so right. It's this idea of like, oh, this is for me. I'm going to treat myself. This is something that lessens my burden. That's something that I can look forward to and get excited about every time I put it on my arm. And there's value in that.
And small business is charming, and you realize how charming it is when it doesn't exist anymore. And you're like, well, I really liked going in there with my friend and sitting down over my latte or going to the bookstore. Now, I will say something is the Real, I follow them pretty closely, and I was listening to one of their investor calls because I own some Real stock, and they had said that the main purpose of their stores was to get consigners. And I thought that was pretty insightful, that they're actually not trying to they are obviously selling in there. But the whole point is, they have the people who will review your fine jewelry experts and your, all these people who will evaluate your stuff. And you can even get cash up front on, certain things. But all of that on this call, I was just fascinating, is simply the way into the consignor. Because it's supply and demand, and it's supply, because it's never to me about demand. Because the minute I hit go on the online listing, the demand is already out there. I don't have to create the demand. I have to create the supply, and I have to create a consistent supply. Because in our industry, and I love the fact that you have a program for people to have an incentive to refer people, because what I've discovered, and you can speak to it as well, is so much of this is the one-off, and people don't really talk about it. One-off, I need money for vacation, a trip, a divorce, a surgery. They tell me all this stuff, this, this. So one-off, here's my Chanel handbags, here's my this, here's my that. One-off, I'm moving. One-off, I had surgery, I can no longer fit in these clothes. A one-off, whatever. But the consistent consignor who consumes enough to supply you on an ongoing basis, the high-quality stuff, is super rare in my experience.
Yeah.
The estate, it's a one-off. So, you know, you could have a database of 1,000 consigners, but how many of those are repeat? Because at some point they're going to run out unless they are high consumers or people who change their wardrobe every season or two. And, you know, this is something people don't really talk about, is how do you get the good stuff? And I say we all know what the good stuff is, because what's selling for me is what's selling for you and everyone else, right?
Sure.
So how do you get the good stuff on an ongoing basis? The demand is there. But how do you get that? How do you constantly feed the beast? And I just, you know, this is my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point, and it's something that actually was brought up quite a bit when we were going through the process of determining if franchising was viable for our brand, and that's something that our board brought up, our advisory board brought up as a real challenge. They were concerned, how are your franchises going to get the good stuff? How are they going to get that inventory? How is it going to be consistent? How long is it going to take them to ramp up and to build enough of a consignor base that they have enough of, like you said, those people who buy, you know, new wardrobe every season and so forth? And that was a really important question for us to answer before moving forward with franchising. And the way that we have answered that question is kind of creating an internal marketplace. So we are actually supplying our franchises with their initial inventory for the first up to 18 months. They can slow down sooner if they're seeing enough coming in from their local market, but we are actually supplying it for them. So like I just sent out our first batch of inventory to the South Florida store. And what I think makes it work is that our stores are in different markets. So what was in Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, South Florida, different customers are seeing it. So we have this opportunity to move inventory from store to store, and that's what feeds the beast. It's having the ability to rotate.
Now, is this, let me interrupt you. Is this, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Is this inventory you own, or is this consignment inventory you're sending?
So it's inventory that we own that we're sending.
Yeah, and that would make. I'm just assuming. I didn't want to assume for everyone listening.
Totally.
Own it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love that idea. That's a wonderful program. Like, we'll just set you up with some inventory, and now I'm assuming they have to buy the inventory at a very special price, right?
So
they would have to buy it
from it to them.
We can sign it to them. I love that.
So we become their first consignor, and that way they don't pay for it themselves, and they can keep their cash for their build out.
Whoever's listening, genius. I love it. That's so great.
I think that's how that's the difference for them between maybe starting out on their own and slowly accumulating, and really this way they start with the good stuff. And then, you know how it is when you have the good stuff, people bring you more of the good stuff. At least that's been my experience. So that's what we're trying to create for them.
Oh, yes. I've had people who like brought in, you know, like 10 of these like Louis Vuitton and Chanel bags all at once. And, these are the ones I don't use. But they don't bring you their only one, right? Nobody's bringing you their only one. They're going to bring you when they have multiples, right? Really
totally.
Cool.
But have you noticed that whenever you have a lot of those pieces, people bring you more of those pieces? It's like you need it to draw more. I think it's just part of it.
Absolutely. I love all this. I could just talk to you all day about trends. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back. I love the fact, I'm going to go back to the very beginning because we are coming to the end of our podcast here. But you had worked at the American Cancer Society. What's it called? What's the official name of it? The Discovery Shop.
Discovery Shop.
When I lived in New York City, I would go into the Discovery Shop all the time, and I was just amazed what was in there. And I'm still thinking about a lamp I didn't buy. Okay, this is like how torturous that this kind of shopping is. It was black and white marble lamp base. There was no not a hood. What is it? Lampshade. Mm-hmm. It was just the base. Mm-hmm. You always get just the base, right, at these things. It was black and white marble, diamond shape. I'm still thinking about that lamp I didn't buy, But I just want to know, I love the Discovery Shop. And someone like myself, I have been in this segment since I was 13. My mother took me to my first consignment shop. And I didn't know what it was because back in my day, 'cause I'm much older than you, I'm like, I don't know what this store is because it's not a department store and it's not the Goodwill. It's something else. And, beaded sweaters from the 60s and Liz Claiborne suits. And she was writing a check and she was following the sales on a 4x6 index card, way back in the day. But I got into this for a very long time, but since I was very, very young, I was always in charge of the family yard sale. Okay, this is how did you become how did you get into consignment? Well, I was in charge of the family yard sale, and these dealers would come in, and they would know what to make of me because, like, I'm 16 or however old I am, 17 or I'm like living at home, whatever, and I'm like. They're like trying to bargain, and my favorite was that they would always have this little glint or gleam in their eye where they had picked up something that they knew they were antique dealers. This is way before the original resellers are the antique dealers, right? And they're looking for whatever they're looking for, and we'd be haggling. And my favorite was when people would do the double discounting. They'd say how much, and I'd say how much for each piece, and then you'd be like, $78. Well, I'll give you $50, and I'm like, well, I already discounted it. Like, so I'm like fighting with these people as a teenager on, I know it's valuable, and I have consistently overpriced my things ever since because to make room for all that. But I've been in a long time. I think I've had every experience except couture. I've been everywhere from rolling around in the Goodwill bins to, buying off the clearance rack at Bergdorf Goodman in New York, the Barney's Warehouse sale, Century 21, Buffalo Exchange, Crossroads Trading. I mean, every kind of buy. I have not been to yours because I didn't know about yours. I can't wait when I go to Santa Barbara. When I go to Santa Barbara next to see my brother, whenever that will be, I will definitely check it out and go in there. But all these different experiences, and the thing that I always remember was really trying to hone in on the most unique, the most special, the coolest thing in that environment on that given day. And I've seen so many beautiful things over the years, things that weren't my size or I couldn't use. But this kind of selling and this kind of business never gets old to me because there's always something to be discovered. It's like mining for gold and extending the life cycle. And, there's just so much good in what we're doing. And sure.
I always say the same thing. It never gets old.
No, never. And you have to be profitable, though, to continue. And I think that, the fact that you're growing a chain I'll put it this way. I've looked at franchises online. We've talked about franchising our store. We've talked about all these things. And there aren't that many that are consignment, especially adult consignment. There's like kids consignment, but there are you can count on one hand the number of franchise for this kind of business. So I love the fact that you're already in there because there's room for this. I think everything's permanently changed. There's so much beautiful things out there that when you make it a boutique and you make it look beautiful, people come into our store, they don't even know we're consignment half the time. They're like, is this used or new? And you can never tell by their expression if they're turned on or off by the answer when they don't know, right? You can never what is he thinking? She just ran out the door. What does that mean? This is a yes or a no? Because sometimes they'll go, either they'll run out the door and you have no idea, or they'll be like, maybe I have some bags for you. And they're like, okay, they're asking for that. You never know. But I think this industry is here to stay. But anyway, so Johanna, is there? I really appreciate having you on the podcast tonight. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what we could talk about, but I really love so much that you've shared where you've come, where you're headed, and I'm just assuming, and I'm going to assume you're going to just poised to take over the world, but maybe you can tell me what your plans are. I know what you're doing for at least 10 years. You're supporting your franchise in Miami. But what are your plans? Where do you see the company going? I mean, where are you headed?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Jennie, so much for having me on. Like you said, I could talk to you about this stuff for hours, so I appreciate the chance. And as far as where we're heading, we're looking to dominate the national market with a chain of these consignment stores partnered with our franchises, and we're looking to open 100 stores in the next 5 years. That's the plan, and I think that we're just going to keep chugging along in that direction. I do also want to say, for just really quickly circling back to something we spoke about earlier with so many stores struggling with closures and everything right now, that consignment and resale shops in particular, this is really the time to toe the line. This is not the time to give up, because once we get through the closures part of this, a recession is really a boon in our industry. And so this is just a time to stick with it and to get through the next few months, however you know how, and it'll be worth it. So I just want to put that out there, having been through a recession with this business before, that it's got to stick with it right now.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I think that's great. I'm a member of NARTS. Are you? I don't know if you're a member of them, the Trade Association for Resale and Consignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The gentleman who is been on, he's every night on Facebook at 5:00. He has been, just like you, a big cheerleader for people to get to the other side, as he calls his name's Neil Abramson. He's the president of NARTS. And I do agree, it is a scary time. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I was terrified. When somebody says don't leave your house, it really does a number on your head. They don't just make you stay at home for no reason and shut your stores down and everything else. So it's very, very difficult the first 3 months for me and everyone else. So I like the fact that enough time has passed that we're in a different place with all of this, and a lot of the fear. I know the fear has subsided, but not the damage. Right, the damage that's been done to so many stores, because businesses are evaluated on cash flow. When there's nothing flowing for 4 months, and then when it does flow, or if it's reduced to have more like 80% off, or you're just
so much
barely
depends
like
on the
whatever.
flexibility of the landlord. Yeah, totally,
absolutely. But I think that I think further things are going to happen. I'll be my prediction. My prediction is the government will continue to do things to help businesses survive. Yeah. I do believe that, yes, this is a perfect time to keep pushing forward, push online, use social media, use whatever tools are out there to keep building the business and to not give up just yet if you can, because
don't listen to those brick and mortar is over, people, because it's not over.
Don't listen to that. Brick and mortar. No, when we reopened Walker Viden, there was a woman. I put it in our newsletter, and there was a woman who was one of our regulars. She met me at the door. She was at the door, and I wasn't even at the door yet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I better run across the street. And she brought me handmade bread and jam. Like, I just wanted to, say hello on your first day back. And I was really touched, because you don't really know where you fit in the minds of people that are your customers. Because, you're just, you chat and it's a transaction. So you don't really know where I know that I have my favorites. So I never think about I'm that to someone else. And
totally.
It was really sweet. And it really made a big difference.
I know exactly what you mean.
But we're going to keep pushing through, and as long as the government helps us with the landlord's the issue. It's really all about the landlords for everybody, whether you're a landlord where you live or you're a landlord for your business. It's all in their hands. Yeah. And so as long as we can get more flexibility, you can always get caught up on rent, or you can always kind of get back to normal.
Find a way to make it through. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Johanna, it sounds like you are thriving, and I just love the fact that you are franchising, that your goal is to have 100 stores in 5 years, and I hope to see the Closet Trading Company in all over the country. And I just love the fact that you're doing this, because this is there are other people are not doing this, and I love that you're in there. You're in there first, basically, and I wish you so much luck in this, because there's room for everybody. There's so much potential and so much market and reselling that there's room for your gigantic franchising situation and everyone else who wants to do this. There's no shortage.
Thank you, and I definitely will stop by. I'm excited to see your store in Pasadena next time I go out there. I'm going to come visit and shop. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. Joanna, I look forward to having you on the podcast again. If you're interested, that would be great. I feel like we have lots more that we could talk about. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so
much, Jennie.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to be in touch with Johanna Zlenko, the CEO of the Closet Trading Company, you can do so at their website, which is www.theclosettradingco.com, or at their Instagram, which is The Closet Trading Co. And you can also email her from her website address. Thank you again for joining me on Closet Conversations. This is Jennie Walker, owner of JennieGirl's Closet, a reselling business and styling concern, and also co-owner of Walker Viden Luxury Consignment in Pasadena, California. If you like the song you heard at the beginning, it's called Black Hat, written and recorded by Jennie Walker and Tommy Farragher. It's available on the album Night Flight to London, which is on iTunes worldwide now.